Stop the anger. Today on Simply Bible. I think it's very safe to say that we live in a world today that is very polarized. Differing groups are always at each other's throat, it seems. You can't turn on the news or social media without seeing people being ugly to each other, insulting one another, being angry and hateful to each other. How do we change that? Because let's face it, we as Christians, as we are trying to navigate our way through this world that's full of hate and anger, it's easy for us to get caught up into that kind of thinking. It's easy to let the seeds of anger enter into our heart, and then that anger begins to grow. And it turns into hate. And it turns into violence, ultimately, if we take it to its furthest extreme. And at the very least, we end up hurting someone with either insults or acting in an ugly way toward them. And yet, we are called to be different. We as Christians have to be different than the world. We can't live by the world's standards. So how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect ourselves from getting caught up in all of the anger and division that's in the world? Well, Jesus helps us out in Matthew chapter 5. In verse 21, Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to the hell of fire." What's very interesting about these two verses is that Jesus is saying peace isn't broken when someone is murdered or when someone dies. The religious leaders of the day, they were so trying to skirt the line of where the law was to see how close they could get without breaking it. And so they would go around and say, well, you know what? This person did something to me and I hate them for it. But you know what? I didn't murder them. Relationships would be broken. Tension would be there. Confrontation would be there. And they would say that even though these relationships would be broken and it was causing all kinds of divisions within the society. But hey, at least I didn't murder them. I didn't break the law. And Jesus says, peace isn't broken when someone dies. Peace is broken when you let the anger against them dwell in your heart and grow in your heart to the point where it becomes wrath and it becomes hatred, and it can even lead to violence. The seed of murder is anger. So don't let the anger dwell in your heart. Get rid of it. It's not just the murderer who's liable to face God's justice and God's judgment. It's also the one who allows the anger to just grow and continue to grow in their heart. It's the one who causes divisions among people. It's the one who spreads hatred among people. It's the one who insults and is ugly and acts hateful towards people. They too are going to face the judgment of God. Now it's easy. It's very easy when we look at scriptures like this to have our view of always looking outward. We're looking at other people. Other people do this, or this group is guilty of this, or this individual over here is guilty of this. But Jesus wants us to turn from an outward look to an inward look. We have to look at ourselves. It has to begin with me. It has to begin with you. Just individually, we have to look at ourselves because Jesus says we are all guilty of this. We have all been guilty of allowing anger to seethe in our hearts and to grow. And anger, when it grows, it spreads like a fire. It spreads to other individuals and it hurts other individuals. And that's why it's so important to rid our heart of anger as soon as we recognize that it's there. And again, that's why it's so important to look inward, because we've all been guilty of it. We've all gotten angry at someone. Someone said something to us. Someone insulted us and we get angry. And as a result, we lash out. We've got to stop that. Jesus says, even when we, in anger, lash out at someone else, we're guilty. We're guilty and we're liable Jesus wants us to stop fanning the flames of anger that's within us. He wants us to stop fanning the flames of outrage that can easily set into our hearts. Verse 23 says, "So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you." Now, Jesus is going to show us how. He's beginning to show us how we can get rid of the anger. Jesus is beginning to show us how we can actually get rid of the hatred that we have toward others and that others can have toward us. He's showing us how to be reconcilers. He's showing us how to be peacemakers. And so he's being very practical here. And so here is someone who has something against you. You're going to worship, and that's the idea behind this verse. And leaving your gift at the altar, bringing a gift to God to the Jewish culture was one of the most important things you can do. And Jesus says, no. If someone has made an accusation against you, if someone is angry with you, if someone has something against you, you stop and you go to them. Now, our tendency when someone's angry with us, the world today, the cultural view is, okay, well, that's their problem. It's not my problem. Why do I have to do anything about it? If they're angry, their anger is theirs. It's not my issue. I didn't do anything wrong. But Jesus says, no. You stop what you're doing. You leave your gift at the altar, and before you worship God, you go and you be reconciled with your brother. Jesus says, no. You take the initiative. You go. You fix the problem. You be a peacemaker. Be a reconciler. Verse 24 says, "Leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift." Jesus says you have the responsibility as a disciple of His, as a citizen of the kingdom of heaven, to be a peacemaker, to be a reconciler. This is how we stop the anger. This is how we stop that fire from spreading throughout the world. It's one individual at a time. You and I, as God's people, one person at a time, you and I, we take the initiative and we go and we fix the problem. We reconcile the relationship. We act as a peacemaker. Well, what does that look like? What do we have to do? How do we do that? We sit and we have a conversation. We talk it out. We stop building walls between us. We talk out our problems. We let them air their grievances against us, and we sit and listen. And we really listen, because sometimes when we listen, we're listening just in order to argue. We listen just in order to make an argument against them and to criticize what they're saying, or just wait to respond. That's not really listening. We listen to what they have to say, and then we take it in honestly and say, are they correct? Is it a misunderstanding? You talk it out and you have a conversation, and you do it immediately before the flames of anger get so out of control that you end up doing something that you regret, saying something that you regret, or even breaking the relationship permanently, going to the point where it simply cannot be fixed. Be a peacemaker. Another thing we can glean from this is that Jesus is prioritizing relationships over ritual. It's almost scary. It's eye-opening at the very least to realize that our worship to God, our relationship to God, is dependent upon our relationship with others. We cannot worship God and have a good relationship, a close relationship with God, when all of our earthly relationships are broken. Jesus is prioritizing relationships in this passage. God is not interested in our rituals unless we are interested in our relationships. And that is why Jesus here prioritizes reconciliation, relationships, peacemaking. Verse 25 says, "Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny." Jesus warns us here that conflict will eventually get out of hand. If we don't fix it immediately, if we allow anger to go and grow and become that fire that just spreads, it's going to cause a conflict that will be out of control, and conflict always escalates. Someone says something to you, you say something worse back. Someone hits you, you hit them harder. And Jesus says that's not how His people are to be. His people are to be peacemakers. And again, we've all been guilty of this. We've all gotten angry. We've all fanned those flames. We've all done things out of anger that we regret, said things out of anger that we regret, insulted others out of anger, hurt people out of anger. And Jesus calls His people to be different. Jesus wants us to recognize our liability in this, that we are guilty of this. But not only recognize it, He shows us a better way to live. It's easy to get angry, and it's easy to allow that anger to grow. It's natural to want to strike out against someone who has made us angry. But we are required to live differently. We cannot walk by our fleshly desires. We are to walk by the Spirit and by the Spirit's message. And we cannot allow all of the tension that's in the world and all of the anger that's in the world and all of the hatred that's in the world to continue to divide us and drive us apart. Jesus calls us to be different. So let's strive to be reconcilers. Let's strive to be peacemakers. And we do that by prioritizing our relationships. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please take the time to subscribe to our channel, hit that bell notification, and you'll be notified when new videos come up. Please share this with your friends and family so that we can get the gospel message out to as many people as possible, and give us a thumbs up. And that will help with the YouTube algorithm so that this video can reach more people. If you have Bible questions, please leave us a comment and we might use that in a future video. Thank you for watching.